All right. Yeah, shit. I'm waiting for people to come in on Twitch, and I forgot that you would be watching this on a VOD. So if you're watching the VOD, welcome. Thanks for watching. Running a bit late tonight just because we had other appointments, but I still wanted to get the stream done. Didn't want to bail completely, so it's 9 p.m. my time. We'll probably go till 10, 10:30, 11. It'll be a shorter stream. But we'll see how it plays out. Hey, fat poops. Chaz Solo, Quicksana. Howdy. Tannhauser, Fielder, what's going on, guys? Hey, Chinidi. Vanifek. I swear, Vanifek, I swear I just heard your name somewhere. Was it during the interview with between let me say it differently. Was it during the interview that Larry had with Secrets? Is that where I just heard it? I swear I just heard it today even. Yeah, okay, I thought I heard your name. So Goblin had just asked a question. It's kind of it was fun timing. We were just talking about milestones and kind of looking ahead and working backwards and stuff like that. So we were just having that conversation. And then Goblin asked a cool question in our Slack and was answering that to the best of my ability with my lobster claw and stuff like that. But he had mentioned it, and it was funny because I was hoping to be able to discuss it on stream, but he had mentioned maybe it'd be easier to talk about it on stream, so that's actually cool. Hey, Pattis, and Quicksand asks, are you going to play on Quorum? Yeah, I'm excited for it. Super excited for Quorum. Plan on playing, I think I'm going to play a Cleric, and if the time allows, then a Necro. Same shit you've seen me play before. But I really had fun with the Cleric. I felt like I could be useful a lot. I had enough fun running around doing little Cleric quests and stuff like that, so I think I'll play again. Yeah, Pattis, no one will guess what your main will be. Zoidberg hand. I just wanted to be more like Zoidberg. ABQ, SE2, hallo, wie geht's? Okay. So, those of you just coming in, I was saying before that I got started late tonight. As many of you probably noticed, it's 9 p.m. here. I'm probably still going to wrap up at, 10:30, maybe 11, but probably more like 10:30. Hey, Zukin. So it'll be a shorter one. With that in mind, I think it'll be fun to continue the conversation that we started in our Slack. We use Slack as a team. That's our primary communication platform. So we use Slack. I'm not going to show you the Slack on stream, but we use Slack, and it's essentially like Discord for professional environments or something, right? So it's just a communication platform. Anyways, the question that Goblin asked, and Jasmine's over here pulling. We've got a bunch of mint drying. I got this drying rack that I hang from something in the room, and so now she's over hanging out with me, but she's pulling crispy mint off of the stick. Let me see. Like this. Wait. Let me see if does it get green screened out? No, it doesn't. You can see. We got a ton of it hanging up. So no, you're good. I'll have to think past it. Honestly, my shoulder's bothering me more than that is. I don't know what's going on tonight, but definitely a good night to bitch and moan a bit, and then go to bed. Hey, Liz Biscuits. ABQ said, es geht und dir? Es geht mir okay. Let's see. Is that to keep the vampires away? Mint? I don't know that mint does that. It's for morning tea. Jasmine likes her morning tea made of fresh mint. Wallpaper is sick. Is a recent Goblin edition. Okay, so let me bring it back up, the question, and then we'll get into it. Goblin asked if there was a term for taking some separate time to do the opposite of future creep, like taking inventory. Let's see. Essentially, because I don't want to necessarily read it word for word, just out of consideration of Goblin. I don't know if he intended for it to be read here. So I'm trying to figure out a way. Okay, cool. Sorry, Pattis, your message popped up, and so I was like, oh, am I not wearing pants? Pattis is watching the stream, and when he sends me a direct message on Slack, I'm like, uh-oh, did something bad happen? Nope, just good update. Okay, cool. So essentially the question is like, is there a process for, and is there terminology for going through and looking at essentially the feature list, and I would assume like content list as well, and overall like scope of the game, and trimming any fat, and essentially making the decision of like, do we actually proceed with this feature for launch, or do we put it into like a future rollout plan? And so let's see, it says definitely not advocating for something like a purge or a feature or something, more so asking those with more dev experience and expertise. You've had experiences with cut features, and if it's better to do that early, or if there's some features that were worth the extra effort that were a direct result of future creep. Yeah, taking stock, Liz says. Yep. John, he's shipped. I know of at least 3 indie games that John's shipped. He responded and said, I think it's a great practice to constantly evaluate the efforts, what efforts are most valuable to the project, and adjust prioritization. Sometimes future creep ideas are good enough to be core features and worth prioritizing. I can't think of everything when designing initially. Most future creep ideas that are not as important as core stuff. For most future creep ideas that are not as important, it's a good skill to push them off so they don't bog down important things. And Zukin responded as well in here. And again, I'm not reading word for word just because for some reason it feels like it's more considerate when I do that, but then hopefully I'm not screwing up the summary. And Zukin says he's an advocate for keeping things reasonably obtainable, especially in this early work and free time phase. Yeah, so my response to that is I've worked in every environment that I've worked in has had some sort of process for doing this, even if it's a game that's live. So game that's live versus a game that is in development going live winds up looking a bit similar. The difference between the two is usually if the game's already live, we've got a pretty solid understanding of what the game is, and it's really about, all right, how are we going to move that forward? And based on our understanding of the community's response to the game as it currently is, what do we then think are the best features or content to prioritize in order to achieve whatever specific goal? And I was going to say whatever business goal, because that's ultimately really what we're talking about. But it sounds so clinical and like soulless and not customer focused when you say it that way. But the business should be operating in a way where it's very much, it's very, for us, player centric, and thus allows us to maintain the health of the game longer term. Let me see if I switch with this view in this scene. It may actually make it so that when you guys say stuff, it'll be easier to read. Yeah, so it should pop up there on the side. Might be able to make that a little bit bigger, a little bit easier to read. We'll do that for now. Yeah, so it just like everything I've seen in development so far, and you folks that work at other companies or have watched other companies in action or whatever it is, maybe it's different for you, but it is definitely more art than science. And on a game that's not out yet, right? Like we're still developing the vertical slice. We're still defining like the core of the game. Even though we are now, as of September, 3 years into development, and I was just explaining that to somebody else yesterday, I think. It's easy to look at other projects and be like, oh my God, they've been in development for 7 years or 10 years or whatever. It's easy to forget that we started this whole concept in 2020, right? And for the first year, it was 4 of us. And then we basically added the bulk of the core team in the next year. And then we've added folks since then, right? So that's like 1 year was just us sticking around in Blender and getting everything going. And a lot of that work that you saw back in the capsule days. Year 2, we really started to turn things on. Year 3 is basically just resolved. And again, we're still building the team. We're still getting the core. We're still getting the core game figured out and worked on. And we're going into year 4, right? The thing with us is the fact that it is basically everybody's spare time, which is awesome in the sense that we have people that are clearly passionate because it's in their spare time. It also makes it so that we're not running a burn rate like other teams, but we are figuring stuff out that we need to figure out ultimately for the long-term sort of definition and health of the game. So just real quick, hey Bitekeeper, hey Kilrain, the Act player says, will there be cloaks with the backpacks? There already are cloaks with the backpacks. We'll be putting in toggles for each of them later though. But one of the hardest things that I've seen in talking to former colleagues and peers in the industry, the hardest thing is finding the fun and like finding the actual definition of the game. And so on one hand, it sucks that we can't just bring the people that want to or able to come onto the team full time. That would be awesome, and that's something we talk about pretty much weekly, and plot out and all that stuff. Interestingly enough, I would say at least half, but probably more of our team, when you look at it in the spreadsheet, will not be full-time, even if we had the cash to make them full-time. They like their jobs, or they have really, really, really solid jobs. We'd never be able to replace those salaries or whatever. And they like working on the project as a means of relaxing. They believe in the project, etc. And we're cool with that. And, that'll be one of those things where even if they're not getting a salary, like some or many people on the team, then awesome. We'll, they'll be part of our profit share and all that shit. And we'll take care of them. We want them to stick around forever. So, they could work with us part-time for fucking ever. That'd be great. So anyway, because we're not running a burn rate, like other startups and other, game companies out there that we've watched. And since we've started our project, I've seen at least 2 or 3 companies that are people that I know that are at other places. I've seen those companies come up, run for a couple years, not announce anything, and then unfortunately have to like shut down or basically really restructure and stuff, right? And there are a couple more that are out there that, again, have been around as long as us. They got funding as well, and they haven't shown anything. And I'm not picking on them. I'm just saying, like, it's challenging to kind of hit the definition of your game, and it's even more challenging when you've got a finite runway, a finite pool of money that you're burning through. And some of these teams are 30, 40 people, 30, 40 person team. I'm not shocked if they're spending a couple million a year, upwards 3-4 million a year, some of them. And so even if they started with 8 million, 20 million in funding, it goes pretty fast. And there's that pressure to like really, really, hey, we've got to find the fun. We got to figure it out immediately. And then we got to make a ton of content based on that fun, and then, go, right? So one of the interesting things about the fact that we're a volunteer project, and we're as small as we are, is, I think I just mentioned this in Slack, is we're burning patience and not cash. And people's patience is absolutely like precious to us, and it's something we don't disregard. And the Deac player, Zukin just gave you even more of an answer there. Oh shit, what was I saying? Oh yeah, patience. So it's essentially for as long as people that are working on the stuff on the team are patient with us and believe in the direction, then we keep going. And then as long as the community is patient with us and believe in a project, then that keeps going. And it allows us to move forward in a way where it's not like, oh shit, we need to actually figure out this specific thing by this date, because then we've got to move on, and then we've got to start cutting stuff. Naturally there's pros and cons to that, but for us, I think it's worked well, because then the other thing is, we're not necessarily in a situation where I've seen in the past where you hire a ton of artists, you've got a ton of designers, and they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs if you're not basically just making a ton of shit. And when I look at a project like DC Universe Online, we rebuilt most of that game 3 or 4 times. Like the cities, Metropolis, Gotham, etc. They were pretty well developed and then redone, I would say at least 3 times. And it was really, really hard on the environment artists, because there's just like, shit, we've got to redo all of this. And the thing is, if we don't have our gameplay locked down, and we haven't sort of proven out and iterated on some of these core concepts that make up the core of our game, then we will find ourselves in a situation where we're instantiating content. So we're going broad without fully understanding the implications of the depth, implications of the gameplay or the systems. And then that winds up requiring a lot of rework. And this is why we didn't make a shitload of quests 2 years ago, right? We talked about it and it came up and there was some back and forth of like, hey, let's just start making content. It was like, we don't even have our full suite of tools. There's a lot of stuff we need to learn. Let's make a chunk of content and use that to iterate on our tools and our learning. So hopefully you guys are able to hear me. I just realized that maybe the audio levels were a bit weird. Fielder said, yeah, that's exhausting. Yeah, it is definitely, it can be a challenge. It was already challenging enough, I think, for, Zukin Goblin and then eventually Patrick when he got on the team. Because we iterated on like the character art. Speaking of backpacks and cloaks and stuff, we iterated a lot on the character art. And we had done some different characters, and so each time now we make if we make some big decision or make some big change on characters, then we've got enough characters in that can actually create a fair amount of work, right? So yeah. Anyway, the thing that we hey, Zuby. Zoidberg said, I see it less as patience. Got plenty of that. Seems like there is a good opening in a niche to offer an old school MMO while it's underserved. Now is a good time to get mindshare. Yeah, I mean, as we're continuing to go, we've been off the radar enough and kind of low key enough that it still feels like people are still finding us, right? So it's not like we found our critical mass in terms of audience and now everybody's sitting around just waiting for the game to get done. We've had pretty good, like on Tuesday, seeing keeps pop back in and stuff like that. We've had people that have been around since the stream started, 3+ years ago. Check back in. Scorn was here, every 6 months or so, or a few months, folks will pop back in. We'll see them again. And that's awesome. So for us, that's a decent pace, right? I don't think we've exhausted people's patience yet. But the challenge for us then is, as you mentioned, for us to really make a product that is unique enough to stand out and really capture the niche. Well, clearly define the niche that we're shooting for, capture the niche, and then be defensible in the market against other products. We've got to make something that does have a bit of a unique feel, right? Like we're talking about here, folks coming in saying, are we going to be playing on Project Quorum? Of course, right? Been dying to hop into a new P99 like green experience because I was late to the party, and so I'm excited for that server to pop up, and it's going to be really rad being able to spend 9 months in Classic and 9 months in, Kunark and stuff like that. It's going to be a worthwhile investment, and it's going to be nice to be part of that, community. And there's that feeling that I get, at least, where I know the effort that I'm putting into my character has value because I'm part of a bigger community, and I can measure myself against that community, and people can judge me based on my efforts and all that stuff. And that's something that I really enjoy as part of an MMO. And I really like the EQ experience. I love Classic, and it's cool that that the server is going to be going up through pop and stuff. So all of that's really rad. That said, that experience exists. So we can't just make a game like that, right? We can't make a game that's like other games that are out there, or other games that are out there and available in emulation or whatever. So when we're looking at what our actual proof of concept is in our vertical slice, we're making some decisions that people may look at and question, because they're like, why don't you just simplify it and make it more like EQ? Or, hey, I'm coming from the WoW make it more like classic WoW or whatever it is, right? But I think the bulk of our audience has come to us because they've liked the approach and feel of P99, old EQ and stuff like that. So anyway, when we talk about some of the additional stuff that we want to put in, that is an extension on or an elaboration on, or alternate take on that original like 99 early 2000s experience. And one of the reasons why we look at other games like UO and some of the stuff that was done later, even in like a Vanguard or Classic WoW or something, we're pulling in pieces that we feel will allow us to provide the best like sense of place and sense of an RPG investment, something that's got that original. When a lot of people played their first MMOs within that era, whether that be UO or especially EQ, a lot of us went to it because we were looking for an RPG that was a giant shared experience. We wanted a massively multiplayer online role-playing game with role-playing and shit and role-playing systems and that tabletop experience. And so one of the things that we've looked at is, well, how do we actually lean into that experience and potentially even find features that just never made it into like an EQ or because of their development process got cut early on. So Zoidberg asks, how do you differentiate that original idea investment versus scope creep? It's a slippery debate, right? And I think the key to it is to have people with differing opinions in that area, and then we argue a bit, right? But I would say that the differentiation comes from, are the things that we're adding extraneous, or are they something that really does help us provide that feel that we're shooting for when we were talking about the original idea, right? I just realized it's kind of hard to see in that box, the chat box. So people watching a VOD probably aren't gonna. Let me see if I can give it a little bit more of a background. I don't really have a mini background color. There's not a slider for background color? Huh. You'd think I'd be able to make it more or less opaque. Hey, Kilrain. Make a color source and just throw it behind it. I guess that'll work. Yeah, I've got... So on one of these, I've got the weird Streamlabs thing, and then the other one I've got... Let me see if I can fix this really quick. Add color block, add source. We'll get it figured out. Hey, Sparrow. Let me move it down. This is a pain in the ass. All right, I've almost got myself unfudged. All right, good enough. It's not good enough. It's gonna bug me if it's not perfect. I'm not reading chat at all. I'm screwing around with this thing, but you know what? We'll fix it this time, and then it'll be fixed for life. So next time we do this, it'll work. I super love when the UI does silly shit like this. Okay, good. It works now. Yeah, we're doing it live. All right, so Zoberg says, last question, I'll shut up. Any update news coming on the blog soon? Yeah, so expect it the first week of October. I'm not going to bullshit you. I'm really slow at typing at the moment. That said, Nick may put it together. I'll talk to Nick. Maybe we'll collab and get it put together. It'll be for last month and this month, and then we'll get the update going. Got a bunch of stuff to write up, web related, and so yeah, I'll get to typing. Anyways, the question about like how do you determine whether or not something is feature creep or scope creep or foundational to the game, it really is. A lot of times it's just a feel thing, and then the discussion has to be had, and like the conversations have to be had, because I don't even know that it's a single discussion, right? But conversations have to be had within the team that allow us to then validate the decisions that we're making with regards to adding certain features or going deep on certain functionality, and yeah, basically see if the team buys it. And ideally, if we believe in it enough, then hopefully everybody else believes in it as well. And then we put it in, we prove it out, and see what happens, right? So one of the things that we're working on right now behind the scenes is going a bit deeper on some of the character-specific RPG elements and looking at some of the systems that are part of that, right? And so when we look at things that we've discussed in the past with regards to constraints with inventory, constraints with carrying weight, us paying a lot more attention to like object weight and things of that nature. The reason why we're looking at those things is because then that feeds into other systems like, all right, pack animals, mounts, player housing, and your ability to store certain things or derive certain benefits from things like player housing, things like character states. Are you rested? Are you essentially put into a state by the environment, dehydrated, blah blah blah. Like those all give us essentially the ability to further justify elements that are within the game, right? So it's not enough to just put in something like player housing and go, cool, now you have something to decorate. And that's typically what happens when player housing is put in after the fact, as opposed to thinking about what the impact is with regards to your ability to store stuff, the condition of your character, your ability to advance in certain areas like trade skills. And so when we're at this stage, we're able to play around a little bit more with looking at how all of these systems interrelate, and see whether or not that actually builds a better experience than just having these things be either binary in terms of their value, or just kind of tacked on to the side so that people who are interested in poking at them can poke at them, if that makes sense. And so then a lot of what winds up happening is us, getting these things in piece by piece while trying to keep a bigger overall view on where we want to take them. And yeah, just seeing what the experience actually feels like once we're in game. The challenge was just doing a deconstruction of the game and then looking at all of the pieces and going, okay, well, let's just do that later without actually considering what the impact is on the core experience. Often what will wind up happening is, sure, the item may stay on the list. So, if we've got something like mounts, or if we've got something like player housing, or even certain elements like if you look at like an AA system, alternate advancement system, if those are just kind of like put in the background and treated like something, oh, we'll figure it out later on when we get to it, then there's really the question of, will they be properly integrated into the game, the core game, when the time comes? And if not, will they justify a rework of the core game? And what does that do to the community that's already kind of built up their expectation of the game and their understanding of the experience around the original game? Or if there's not going to be a rework of the game to make them integrated, then there'll always be this thing that's kind of tacked on. So yeah, on one hand, I think I mentioned in our Slack, like, every live game should have a future rollout plan and should understand what additional features are going to be added, after the game is live. You can't predict for 20 years, you can't predict for 5 or 10 years, but we can predict a little bit, like, all right, so we're going to get this stuff done now, we're going to get it tested, the game's going to go live, and then we'll roll out this next thing. You can do that, but I would say that with this project, it's felt pretty important for us to evaluate where we think we're going with the overall experience, and then make decisions on whether or not that feature will ever be in the game. And if we do feel that we want it to be a part of the game, then really push ourselves to find a way to commit to it at this stage and prove it out at this stage, even if it takes us a little bit more time. If that makes sense. Because it gets really easy to be like, okay, we can put in this version of trade skills, and then later we'll make them more important, or we can come back to this thing later, and then we'll figure out how to get it integrated. And I think that's acceptable for certain features, but if we really want it to feel like it's a core part of the game, and we really want them to and we really want the features to be impactful, then let's take the time now and iterate on it, get them in, iterate on it, and then make that call, and then see how everybody feels, especially on the team, about the time that we're investing in that, and whether or not they're finding it to be like a compelling feature. And there's always the question of when we talk about cutting stuff, the question I have is, what is the actual concern, right? Because I think it's usually going to wind up being people that are expressing concern are they're really thinking like, listen, I just want to get this thing shipped, or they're thinking, I mean, that's usually a big one. Shit, I just had it. What was the other one? Really want to get the thing shipped, or the inclusion of certain things really starts to maybe make the definition of the game not jive with what they thought the game was going to be. So it's always good to kind of work through that. Brendan CSW asks, do you think the younger age groups will appreciate a more classic MMO style? I don't know that it's got anything to do with age. I think there's just going to be they're going to be different people looking for certain experience types, and I think it's going to cover the full spectrum. Now, we may see that there are fewer people of younger age groups that are interested in it, and that the core of our audience will tend to be in what we've seen so far, which is about 32 to 50, I think, is when we look at all of our different demographics that come up, whether that be YouTube or anywhere else here. Yeah, old farts, boomers. Speaking of which, Asman, well, I mean, there's outliers on either side, Fielder. Asman just said something interesting earlier today that I may bring up and play as well. I thought it was pretty interesting and applicable to us. Liz said, I've not played a game where I overly enjoyed housing. Nearest was Soda. Gemini said, yeah, housing's not something I play with in MMOs. Kilrain said, I enjoy the housing in Arcade because it allowed for secure farming, which tied into trade routes, which tied into location, etc. Right, and so in that case, it was actually integrated into the game in a decent way. Droop said EQ2 has decent housing. Final Fantasy 14, I hear great things about. Sparrow said EQ2 housing is my favorite. Justin agrees. Kroimish said Final Fantasy 14 housing is great, but it's super hard to actually get a house, which is very bad. When I hopped into EQ2, I enjoyed housing a fair bit, but at the time I'd wish that there was even more value to it. Northern Sky says, I'm old school, never liked housing. I do like guild halls though. Isan mentioned, oh, by the way, hello Isan. Vanguard had some neat concepts for housing. Aslich said, I wish housing had a practical use. Star Wars Galaxies made housing practical. Ogproof said Asheron's Call had a cool housing system. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, that was just one example, but it's interesting to see the examples of where people found it more compelling and why. So I think, yeah, when we're looking at any of those features, the response I had in Slack was essentially, usually if I'm evaluating why something should or shouldn't be in a game, it's how does the inclusion or exclusion of this feature or detail, and what I mean by detail is like essentially an expansion within a feature, right? Because you're going to have a bit of scope creep within that as well. The definition of the feature or additional functionality related to the feature. But anyways, how does that potentially impact the definition of the core game or experience? Per that question, how much is it helping us to maintain or push our uniqueness and defensibility in the market? Right? So we shouldn't be doing things just to do them, and we shouldn't be doing things because someone else is doing them. We should be doing them because the inclusion of that feature or that content helps ensure that we are providing a unique experience, and that experience is satisfactory to our target community or target audience, our customers. Is it necessary from the onset? So is it something that we could add later, right? Like, so if we figure that if there are 10 different ways that owning property and or using ends and things of that nature provide you benefits in the game, do we necessarily need to have player-owned ships in from day one if it's essentially an extension of that concept? No. But we need to figure out whether or not the integration of that concept of a player-owned space actually has the value that we think. And Liz just said, I like the idea of a house where there's maybe a farm to grow your food, potion ingredients, including animals. And Droop says, I agree. Yep. And so it's looking at things like that. What else did I say? Is it necessary from the onset? Are there dependencies that we're not considering? So if we remove this or add this, is there any sort of a ripple effect that we need to actually consider? And then, is it the type of feature or detail that will likely keep getting pushed if it's not explored or even dared to be explored now? One of the things that's been interesting with the discussions for this game so far is our willingness to try some weird shit. Because if somebody handed us a big bag of money and said, hey, we need you to be as efficient as possible in getting your game out. Here's a bag of money, but it's finite and you're accountable to us. So we have certain expectations for the game. Then that's a different process. That's not one that we pursued, right? We've intentionally avoided certain potential means of funding. We've taken a specific approach with the idea that we want to make a game that feels pretty unique to us and explores ideas that we find exciting, right? Like, I don't know that we could go in front of a board somewhere or a group of investors and be like, hey, yeah, and then you can inspect a thing, and then you get text back in return, and then depending on what that text tells you, you may want to, interact with it some more via a new / command, which is like /taste or /rub or /pull, right? And people in that situation would be like, I don't know if that's sexy enough, right? Like, we need something that the kids like because they need to make their money back. And so the ability to do weird shit like that is, it's rare in my experience in the industry that you get opportunities to try really, truly interesting stuff. And I think that's why you frequently see indie games, like a Valheim, like a Among Us or Fall Guys, or like some of these indie games that come out and it's just like, yeah, we tried something weird and it clicked, right? So for us, we're rather than pushing like tons of high fidelity graphical assets at you, instead of pushing fidelity in certain areas, we're actually making it lower fidelity but a higher level of interaction and a higher level of mystery, and really leaning into our data driven tools and stuff. So Liz says one downside of Soda was plots for land were only sort of available in game realistically, needed to be bought with hard cash, and the bigger ones were hyper expensive. Then you needed to buy a house to go on it, and that was the same. And then you needed decos. Yeah, I've seen videos, and some of the breakdowns on just how much cash people were spending in there, and that's not fun. I mean, it's fun for them, I guess, but that's not the kind of game that we want to make. Builder said, yeah, then you become beholden to someone's return on investment. It's the death of creativity. It's not necessarily the death of it, but it definitely makes it to where you're operating under a degree of pressure that will definitely make it more likely that we have to guess at the answer. We have to go, do we think this feature is really that important? And then it's really just kind of some guesswork, and then, oh shit, okay, let's cut it. As opposed to, do we think this feature is important? Well, let's implement a version of it and see. So, Fat Poop says, is this wallpaper out of M&M? Watching a harbor from higher ground. So this is from M&M, and it is actually an underground harbor. So it's an image of what it would look like if someone was observing a harbor in one of our deep zones. Yep. Oh shit, I can see the rocks upper left. Yep. Let's see, Gemini says, I honestly think adding minigames like housing is better done in an expansion after the main gameplay has gained some popularity. I think for a lot of games that's fair, but if the game is planning on having that actually be a core part of progression and the progression of certain things like certain trade skills or the access to certain things or progression of storage availability and stuff like that, then that's the concept that needs to be tested. Now, the fallback position can always be the known one, right? The fallback position can always just be providing tons of extra storage in your bank and things of that nature, but then it removes a potential element for progression. It removes a potential element for player investment, and it also removes something that can contribute to the world sense. Zukin said, gotta go do a work call for a bit. Be back later. I'm not going to be streaming that long tonight, Zukin, so I'll probably catch you in Slack. Housing should avoid making people stay out of the world. For example, in EQ2, you can store all of your trade skill materials in your house as well as universal craft tables. So you can craft and do all your trade skills without ever leaving your house or guild hall. Thus, cities dried up. I don't see anyone in our world because everything has moved into the house. Not ideal. Yeah, it's a fair consideration. Fat Poop says, since the last open stress test, how much has changed? So we've been working on a couple new zones. There's been some additional quest content added since then, and then there's been There's been a fair amount. Honestly, you'd have to look at the updates, especially after the next one comes out. Fair amount continuing to go on the code side. You're welcome. Liz said that's why Shroud of the Avatar's houses were better, because they were physically in the world. You could see people puttering about in their houses. Yeah, and then the people are, having to come in and out of the house, traverse through the city. Yeah, it's something that's come up a few times when we've talked about the fact that there will be a finite number of housing units available in the game, and some will be unlocked through quest content, some will be discoverable, and then as the world expands, the availability of housing will expand. Some people comment on the fact, well, then there's going to be a certain amount of exclusivity, and not everybody's going to get a house and stuff, and that'll be true, and that's going to be something that we tackle. But again, the goal is to have things that provide a degree of exclusivity. We were talking about this the other day, and one of the byproducts of there being finite housing, but there being benefits to housing, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out socially. Because everybody says, well, there's a finite number of houses or housing units, then then I might not get an opportunity to have one, but you might be encouraged to interact and befriend people that do. So it's something we're going to play with. Smokes a lot says Deox house zone was cool. It's funny, I have to look it up again. I don't remember it. Could put in crappy housing in for the less fortunate. Yeah, I mean, over time it will be interesting to see how much we need to actually put in. We do have a slums zone along the river. It hasn't been built out yet. Riverbend will be the sketchier part of town in Night Harbor. Devadu says maybe rich homeowners can lend out the space under stairs for the Harry Potters of the world. I could see that. Like an Airbnb in M&M. Yeah, it's interesting to see you guys fixate on housing. Maybe that's because of the way I said it earlier or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of other stuff that would that probably fall into like the potential future creep category. And some of it's even stuff that's been called out on other projects as, oh man, that's future creep or whatever. But it's stuff that we want to try. So whatever. Fat Poop said, by the way, Sean, I never told you that, and I am drunk enough. So much thanks. You worked on Planes of Power and Discord and Omens, and such an awesome experience to meet someone like you. I appreciate that. Are you in the US though? At what hour of the day are you drunk enough to espouse your love to me online, Fat Poops? Are you okay? Hello, Martine. Oh, you're in Northern Germany. Good friend of Ishiwatari. Okay, cool. Good. All right, so it's a reasonable hour to be drunk, especially in Germany. So if housing is exclusive, then does it add to progression or is it just a perk? Those who don't get into a house would be held back with no option, which then would limit how much housing can integrate into progression. I would see it more as a perk on top of core progression, but there is always going to be things that we need to put in to provide a degree of exclusivity. And so that'll be something that we've always got to look at the balance of. But again, I say housing is a broad term. And so it would account for personal housing. It'll account for guild housing, right? And it will, and some of the functionality will be stuff that will be available in other ways to varying degrees. But yeah, we'll have to see if we find essentially that problem, which has come up in our discussions before about how to make something have value and feel integrated without it feeling like a complete block. Tyler said, I like the idea of a random house on random hillside. Not everyone needs to live inside the cities. Yeah, absolutely. What's the best way to support M&M? If you like what you're seeing, let other people know and then hang out in the community or at least check back regularly. But there's no way to support us financially at the moment. Let's see. Yeah, some of the stuff like so there's going to be ongoing maintenance. No one owns a house. You're always renting from the game. And so, yeah, there's going to be upkeep. So there will be some turnover. And then some properties will come with conditions. So there's a certain amount of maintenance that'll go on in that way as well. Furnish out on the street again. Yeah. You have to play the game forever to own a house forever. That's how they get you. But the people that do, right? Like, so if you're an early adopter and you're a consistent player, right? Because that's another way. I think that's another way of saying, the hardcore players. So if you're the person that discovers the inn out on the hillside and you unlock or meet the criteria for being able to lease that inn, then and you maintain that inn for the basically in perpetuity, then that's great. Right? I don't see that as a downside. The biggest question, I think the most valid sort of like concern is what Aslich was saying up there, right? It's like, all right, we have to watch and ensure that we're able to put in systems like that provide value, but then, and in the case where there's a bit of exclusivity, or there's a finite amount of access to something, we need to make sure that doesn't create a situation in which people are just kind of screwed. Maintenance paid in advance stinks. People quit, but they have paid plat for X number of years. Yeah, I think that type of thing is that's a little too much. Hey, Goblin. Justin said, in my own real life apartment, it took 18 months to get a table and 2 chairs, but it's a very nice table and 2 chairs. It can be negative though if new players coming to an old game don't see a way to catch up to others. For example, EVE Online character progression system is a big negative when I tried it out. Yeah, especially if there aren't newer servers coming online. How's the conversation been? Goblin, he's banning people nonstop. Help. Yeah, I mean, aside from me banning everybody, it's been pretty good. Hit on some of the topics from Slack earlier, so it may or may not have been answered in a satisfactory manner if you watch the VOD. Let's see. Yeah, Justin, they really are nice table and chairs. I like the color. Ooh. Yeah, Goblin. So we started with we started with the topic in general, but then it just kind of gravitated towards discussing housing for the last like 30 minutes or so. Which is absolutely nothing wrong. It's always nice. I enjoy any time we're discussing features or ideas or whatever in here, because it's a nice opportunity to get a bunch of different perspectives on stuff. Which, as we get into the details of certain things, like it's always nice, because as we're working on shit, you can just come in here and mention that we're working on it, and then we'll get a lot of feedback. Especially if we've got it up on screen and we're playing with it and stuff. So on Tuesday, the thing I'll probably be doing, because tomorrow's Friday, so tomorrow during the day I'll be working on, like I said, I've got a lot of writing to do. I need to get some stuff written up for the content of our website revamp. The website revamp's coming along really nicely. Goblin's done a really great job on that. And so that's going to be fun. And there's a a fair bit of new content. It probably won't be like new to a lot of you that have been following the streams and stuff, but it'll be new in the fact that it's presented in text on the website. So that shit's got to get written up. We've got a feature at the end of this month, in theory, supposedly. We've sent the first images for it, but I haven't heard back from Marnik at the MMORPG subreddit. So at the end of the month, we'll have a little feature on M&M there. So I need to finish writing that up. And yeah, and unfortunately, my typing is a bit slower than normal. Because I'm using one hand and one finger, essentially. So I'll be focused on doing a bunch of writing stuff, and then on Tuesday we'll come back in and probably be doing some like regression or going through and validating fixes on some of the stuff that I was noticing when I was in our GitHub issues. So it looks like there have been some things that have been fixed by Ali and John and others that need to just be double checked. And then go through some of the tools requests that we've got and some of the bugs that we have written up for the programmers, just to make sure all of that's validated. And when we're not doing that, we'll finish the, we'll be working on the Sungreet strand population work. So stuff that we've kind of been poking at the previous few streams, and I've got to get with Nick, and we need some more encounter tables and stuff worked out, or spawn tables worked out for Sungreet strand, or sorry, for Telekir. But then Telekir should be in an okay place. It will then mainly need like itemization and some stuff like that. So we should be good on that front. And then we've got some planning to do. So one of the things, and this is kind of taking it back around to the beginning of this conversation. Hey Monty, Dadvik asked, have you thought about using speech to text? Microsoft speech to text is actually pretty good. So if you use Windows key H, Windows key H, and you just focus in a box somewhere like here, and then click the microphone, the speech to text is not too bad, period. So it's been pretty good. Oddly enough, if you use it with Google, it actually errors out a lot more, and I think that's probably just some Google conspiracy theory shit. This says, I think he means to type up your docs. No, that's, yeah, I mean, I've tried it. It's not that bad, but you guys that actually come in here and hang out, you know how bad I ramble, right? I mean, I'm just always fucking rambling all over the place, like all the time. So that's what I wind up doing to myself with speech to text. I like ramble a bunch into text that then I've got to like edit myself. It's kind of it's really a pain in the ass for me to deal with myself. So when I'm typing, at least I'm moving at a rate where my brain can kind of stay on topic and I'm seeing it come out and I can make adjustments. But yeah. So I've tried a little bit, Liz. I've tried it. It's not horrible. But it's not as good the first time. When I'm just typing it, it's perfect the first time. Anytime I'm typing something up, it's perfect the first time. No editing involved. Perfect clarity, always concise, never a wall of text. So this said I had Dragon naturally speaking, and I tried it and it would put in random stuff and I'd laugh, only then it would make words from that, and then that would make, yeah, I curse at it and then it adds that as well. Kilrain says that's exactly how I am. I've tried using voice to write stuff in iOS for chats and such, but I have to think about it. Think about what I want to say longer than if I'm typing. Yeah, that's what I run into. So, believe it or not, the single finger typing on the left hand actually makes my hand hurt. So I've just been slower, but I've only got like another week of this shit. So, yeah, so to bring it all the way back around, though, one of the things that we do want to do over the coming weeks, and this will be something that I talked to Nick and Ali about, but then we'll also be working with the team on, is want to do some sort of projections, timeline projections, with regards to like, hey, if we were to essentially, if we were to look X number of, X amount of time out and then do a work back schedule from that amount of time, what do we think that looks like, right? Like, what do we think we could get done in that time? And then also do the opposite, right? Where we essentially look at the overall scope that we're shooting for, similar to Goblin's questions, similar to, what we were talking about earlier, and then extrapolate that out and kind of see what are the implications for that as well. And just kind of do that projection, different estimations of scope, and then also work back schedules and kind of see what they look like. Because the interesting thing that when you're projecting out, it makes sense. But one of the things I've noticed happens when you're kind of doing a forward-looking schedule that gets missed when you're not doing a work back schedule is looking at things like testing time, right? So if we were to say we want to go into a live status on X date, it gets easy to kind of think that you can work all the way up to that, instead of working back and going, okay, well then what do we define as the stop point? And then what would be the beta? What is the testing period? What is the iteration period prior to that go live period? And even little things like the pencils down date prior to going live, and considering all of the various things that need to be prepared and ready to go that then get interjected into there. And then also, doing that all the way back, right? So for each sort of thing that's added, is there a testing and iteration period for it? So Turkan says, hope everyone has listened to Robert's new track for Eminem. It's awesome. Yeah, we played it. People weren't asking about it as much tonight, but on Tuesday everybody was asking about it, so we played it several times over. But it was the first song that played tonight, and we can play it again in a second, actually. Asler said, had a friend lose a girlfriend when he accidentally left his voice to texting turned on his phone. Uh-oh. Well, I guess that's what he gets for saying the wrong stuff. All right. So I tell you what, it is almost 10:30 here. I'm going to play Robert's song. We're going to crank it up. For people that haven't heard it yet, the new song. Here it goes. Is it loud enough? What's up, Unchained? Oh, I almost forgot to say, we may see each other before Tuesday. It's my understanding that Project Quorum comes out Sunday? During the interview between Larry and Secrets could have sworn Secret said Sunday 3 p.m. Eastern, which would be 9 p.m. my time, I believe. I think I'm going to immediately roll a Little Gnome Cleric. Do we already have a guild? May revive the old cozy guild. Talet, you're gonna have a ton of fun. Killrain Project Quorum is a new emulated EQ server. Folks will definitely provide you with info if you ask in Discord. As the Druid first is a smart move. Cool. Aslich, I did not realize you were Isaiah. Interesting. How cool. Cool. That was Robert's latest addition to our soundtrack. Those of you that haven't already got it bookmarked, I think this is a command. One more time. All right. I'll play it. Basically, I'll have it be the outro music. Start it again. Cool. All right. It is 10:27. What I'll probably do is I'm going to try to hop on and just it'll be a non-Eminem stream, but especially as we go into the fall and the winter, I'll likely be able to stream a little bit more, get an additional day a weekend, and have that just be dedicated to hanging out and playing some EQ, some PQ. So we'll do that, and then we'll see about doing that on Sunday evening. And let's see. Yeah. So for tonight, I'm going to wrap up. I'm exhausted. I got a couple more things I want to maybe comment on before bed. Then I'm going to go up and get some sleep. Good night, everybody. Schlaf good. Schlaf gut. Fat poops. Martin, wir sehen uns Samstag. Hopefully. Sehr schön. Liz, good night. Dragon, Toodles, goodbye. Unchained, good to see you. Thank you. I will be getting that rest almost immediately after this. See you, Fielder. See you, Aslich. Later, Tannhauser. Zeitgeist. Talet. Talet, you've got to get in there and you got to check out. You've got to check out PQ. You got to get yourself some EverQuest time. It's going to be fun. We're going to have fun. Bikekeeper, see you, Thadvik. See you, good night. Perfect. Beer Chug, bye-bye. Fat Poops, be safe in your current state. Ventali, see ya. Alright. And you can hear more of this song on our playlist. Esan, see you, brother man. Droop, same goes for you. Alright, I'm gonna click the button now. Y'all take care. Maybe I'll see you Sunday. If not, I'll see you Tuesday. Have a great weekend.